Today on Beyond 6 Seconds.
I was born to be a minister. It's what I'm created to do. And I'm finally getting to do that. And boy, when you see somebody that's doing what they love, it's beautiful. In a way, I've been jealous of that because I've known people who are doing what they love, and now I get to do it.
Welcome to Beyond 6 Seconds, the podcast that goes beyond the 6-second first impression to share the extraordinary stories and achievements of everyday people. I'm your host, Carolyn Keel. My guest on the podcast today is Barbara Monahan. Barbara is joining us to talk about her journey from corporate to cleric, how she made the transition from a long career in the corporate world to fulfill her true calling as a minister, spiritual director, author, and coach. Barbara, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Carolyn. It's great to be here. I think this is such a great idea. I'm so happy to be a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of it as well. So starting out, when did you first feel the calling to a life of ministry, and how did you know that that was the path that you wanted to take?
This is a lifelong calling. When I was a little girl, and it's before I could even read. So I'm aging it at between 1 and 5 maybe years old.
Wow.
But I was attracted to my family's Bible, and I would always want to get my hands on it. Even though I couldn't read, I'd love to look at the pictures. Mm-hmm. And one time when I was looking at the pictures, I heard in my heart, I don't really know how that all works, but the words, "You will join me in my priesthood." Wow. And I can remember that I was just filled with joy from that point on, because I knew what I was going to do when I grew up. And I knew that I was going to be working for Jesus, working for God, right? Mm-hmm. So that continued. I remember as a little girl, getting into school, and teachers or adults would be looking at me like, why does she have a smile on her face? What is she up to? Mm-hmm. Thinking I'm doing something not too good. And it was that joy that I had that was coming through. Everything was so great and wonderful. Mm-hmm. Until, I guess, around age 10, I realized, being born and raised in the Roman Catholic tradition, mm-hmm. that they did not permit, they don't, still even today, they don't think that women could have a calling to ordained ministry. Mm-hmm. So that bummed me out at some levels, and I couldn't understand it, of course, at that age, because I loved and trusted God that, I just couldn't understand it. So it was a little bit confusing. Mm-hmm. And then as I moved through teenage years and getting close to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with my life? I don't have any idea, Mm-hmm. It took me a while before I started university. I took some time off because I just didn't know what direction to go in. Mm-hmm. And my mom had always wanted her daughters to become secretaries. So in high school, I had taken some business courses, and within that was some steno and typing, and there was also some bookkeeping classes. Mm-hmm. And I excelled in the bookkeeping classes. And when I reflected, probably when I was 20, on what I'm going to do, that came back to me. And I said, okay, well, let me try to go to university and have accounting be my major. Mm-hmm. And that worked out. And I've been really successful at that, yeah. Which, is surprising because it's not my passion, but I guess you could have a couple of callings in life. You don't have to just have one.
Right.
So this career afforded me the ability to retire at a young age. I retired early, and now it's kind of like a restart button. Now I'm getting to do what I really wanted to do when I was 20. And during my accounting career, I always had that in my back of my mind, and I took advantage of whatever training I could get, coach training. Mm-hmm. I went back to school for a master's degree. I just kept on teaching, training myself for that one day, that mm-hmm. someday, I hoped that I would be able to do this. And that day came, and I'm doing it, and it's amazing, and I'm loving every minute of it.
That's awesome. When you were talking about some of the challenges that you faced, that you had kind of become aware by the age of 10 that in the Roman Catholic Church that women were not thought of to be receiving a calling for ordained ministry. How did you come to that realization, and how did that impact your path forward? Did you kind of try to fight it? Did you kind of resolve to say, well, I want to do this, but it's not something that I'm allowed to do? Kind of what was your experience of that?
Well, you're trained and taught obedience within that tradition.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to obey what the doctrine is. I didn't have it within me to fight. Like, the person that I was at that age is not the person that I am today.
Mm-hmm.
So that was not even a thought in my mind. I remember having conversations with my mom about becoming a nun, and her response was, I would never become a nun. Mm-hmm. And her sister was a nun.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't go any further with that. I just figured, my mom knows. She has a sister who's a nun. So, maybe I should just pay attention to her and listen to her. Yeah, there was no fighting. There's no fighting. I mean, even today, I wouldn't even bother fighting it. It's so deep ingrained. It's not even worth putting the energy into it.
And it wasn't something that you would consider to leave the Roman Catholic faith and say, go to another denomination that would allow women to be ordained?
I did not know of any other denomination. The Roman Catholic Church, they're the one church. That's what they teach.
Mm-hmm.
That no other church is real. So it's only the Roman Catholic Church. So 2 years ago, I learned about the Episcopal Church, and I learned that they have been ordaining women since around the time I was 10.
Wow.
It's just so fascinating when the pieces come together.
Mm-hmm.
So I did eventually, back then, 3 years ago, I left the Catholic Church, and I've become an Episcopalian, and I'm in the discernment process for ordained ministry.
Wow, fabulous.
And it's been great, really great. I just see the difference in how women are treated as equals, and they're in every aspect of the tradition. I mean, there's still some problems about the percentages of how many women are in leadership roles. We have that across the board.
Mm-hmm.
But it's at least the doors are open and you can pursue it. Where before I couldn't even talk about it.
Wow. Was it something that you would mention and just kind of get shut down right away by who you were talking to about it, or? It's
something that you don't even talk about.
Wow.
So in 2014, 3 years ago, I was on a retreat and I met a woman on that retreat, and I got a feeling like it's safe to talk to her about it.
Mm-hmm.
So she was the first person that I ever talked to about it. And it turns out that she too felt called, and she also has a sister who felt called, and her sister is a ordained minister.
Mm-hmm.
So there's more of us out there than just me, and many of them are probably still in silence. If I go on like a Facebook page and I write something about women being ordained, mm-hmm. there are women that will rebuke that mm-hmm. very strongly.
Yeah.
So it's still today, it's very thick as far as the belief that God only picks men.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So yeah, and we learn those so early in our lives, and as you say, it really just in some ways we don't even think to question those sorts of things even into adulthood. So, and it's interesting that you found that other woman to talk to and that you were almost drawn to her.
Having the intention to try opens up some doors, and then a piece, something. Mm-hmm. Like this woman who we put into your life, was put into my life, and that gave me the fuel to take the next step. Mm-hmm. And then something else happens, and the next step and the next step. Like the book that I wrote, I knew that to get into ministry after a whole career of being in business as an accountant, no less, how believable is that going to be? Even mm-hmm. though I volunteered in ministry throughout my career, I thought, I need to have like a business card, and a way to do that is to write a book. Mm. So this idea about writing about tattoos and the meaning behind them came to me, and I pursued that. Now I don't know how to write a book. Mm. I don't even know that I'm a very good writer, but I just took one step at a time. You write one word, then the next word comes mm-hmm. and the next word. And initially, the stories were going to be people in my close family. Mm-hmm. And as I started talking more about it beyond my close family, more and more people wanted to come on. Oh. So I have across the board of people that shared their stories with me, and I created that book called Tattitude, Don't Overthink Me. And that's kind of like my business card to show that I have the ability to transition from different fields.
And what's the common theme that pulls all those short stories together in your book?
You just don't judge people. People are so fascinating. Mm-hmm. And if we could just get past the cover, right? one woman said to me before reading the book, she's like, oh, if I saw somebody with a tattoo, I wouldn't talk with them. Then she read the book and she said, when I would go to the doctor's office, there was a woman who would take my blood and she had a tattoo and I would never talk with her. Mm-hmm. After I read your book, I started talking with her. I learned a lot about her. So, we judge people. We think that they're something that they're not. Mm-hmm. And the purpose of the book is to help people break out of that just a little bit. And I thought that tattoos would be a safe place for people to be able to break out of, because sometimes we're really hard with our judgments and what we think, our prejudices, that we don't want to let them go. So I thought tattoos they're universal. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a safe place for people to explore the idea of maybe I have to look at my perspectives and my prejudices a little bit closer and see how much truth there really is to them.
Interesting. So does everybody featured in your book have a tattoo? And that's sort of where it starts? Yeah.
Everybody except me.
Right. And so you were working in your corporate career when you were putting this book together. Is that correct?
Yes.
How else did you express your calling while you were working in your corporate career?
I was able to start a women's group at my company and just try to open people up to a more just type of work environment, that it's not all task. About the tasks. The tasks will get done, but the people are the most important thing. Right. And the company that I worked with was very task oriented. I always wondered why I never felt like I really fit in there. Mm-hmm. And then we took a leadership training platform. You might be familiar with it. And the trainer did a grid. And the trainer said, well, here in our company, we are heavily on the task side of the grid. We want to move more to the people side. Mm-hmm. You can't be heavy on either side. You have to have a balance. And all my testing within that training came up that I was on the people side. Mm. And it just, the light bulb, it was aha moment. I said, this is it. We are a task oriented and I'm a people oriented. And the company and I are rubbing against each other.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, then I was able to live into who I am and be the people person and be okay with that. And hopefully, because I knew the company wanted to move toward that direction a little bit, hopefully I could get some people to come on board with me.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting that the company itself was very task-oriented, and then you being in accounting and finance seems to me pretty task-oriented. So yeah, that's interesting that all of your talents were really on the people side of things.
Because I was born to be a minister.
Yep.
This is what I was born to be. It's what I'm created to do. And I'm finally getting to do that. And boy, when you see somebody that's doing what they love, it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. In a way, I've been jealous of that because I've known people who are doing what they love, and now I get to do it.
It's wonderful. And then you also pursued training and certification and coaching while you were in your corporate job. Is that right?
Yes. At one point, the training department was interested in trying to build a coaching climate, all about getting to that people side of the grid. So I was able to get a coach and I totally fell in love with it. Mm-hmm. And I think what I loved about it was that it was so close to being a pastor. Mm-hmm. What a pastor would do to help develop and listen really carefully to what's happening in a person's life and steer them with some open-ended questions and get them to really crack it open and see what's going on. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, maybe I can do this. Maybe this could fulfill what's inside of me as far as the calling. And so I went all in and I got certified. I went to school and the company paid for it. It was great on that part. Yeah. And then I just developed those skills and used them for the rest of my career. And I'll use them, for wherever I do next. I mean, it's just a part of me.
And what kind of coaching certifications did you get?
Corporate coach certifications with Corporate Coach U. Mm-hmm. And with Lance Secretan, it's a higher ground coaching certification.
Oh. So until very recently, you were working in your corporate career, trying to do things that were more focused on the people side, developing your coaching. What was that turning point in your life that really led you to say, I'm going to devote myself completely to fulfilling my calling and not play in corporate, and this is the way I need to go?
in 2011, I had a diagnosis of cancer. Mm. At the same time, I was taking care of my mom who was dying from cancer.
Wow.
And it really rocked me. It was a highly trauma type of event. In that year, I not only did my mom die, but my aunt and then my father. And this is all happening within a 6-month period.
Wow.
Where I'm getting my treatment for cancers and surgeries, and one by one they're dying. And it was, I call it the year death knocked on my door and then shoved my face in it.
Oh.
And when I came out of that, I reached out to a very close friend and I said, I need something spiritual. Help me find something spiritual. And I was in a place where I'm somebody that goes and does things on my own. I don't need any hand holding, but I couldn't in that space, that time. So her and I, we went to a retreat, and that's when I was talking about my disease and everything, because I kept it quiet. I kept it out of the business world because I needed to go to work and be distracted.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't be reminded that I might be dead. I needed to have some type of distraction, and the work was distraction.
Sure.
And in addition, I had been promoted to a high-level position. And as a woman, it's difficult to get those positions. But then if you're a sick woman, I didn't know how effective I would be if I had that target on me. So I didn't want anyone in the company to know about it.
Wow.
But that's when I started coming out of that and healing, I realized, look, my mom had breast cancer 10 years earlier, and now she's dying from ovarian cancer. So I was putting that connection together. Like, could this be a 10-year stint for me, Mm-hmm. And I said, I got to find a way. Mm-hmm. I just have to find a way. There's no way I could leave this world and not have at least tried to find a way. Mm-hmm. So that determination, I guess, just started opening up all these avenues for me. Talk about synchronicity and all of that kind of thing was happening. It's just really unbelievable. And I have it in my journals, and I intend to write a book about it because I need to actually read it because it's just so unbelievable when I think about it, all the things that have come to me to help me fulfill this calling.
Wow. During that period, I know you mentioned you are looking forward to writing a book about that. Were you journaling about your experience so that you can go back and reflect on it? Or how did you take the time to reflect on what was happening and put the pieces together and recognize that synchronicity and things changing in your life?
It was journaling. For a while there, I was actually doing photo journaling. Mm-hmm. Because when you're faced with death at such a young age, what kept on coming up was, did my life matter? Mm-hmm. Do I even matter? So I took a little portable camera and I started just taking pictures of everything I was experiencing. Mm-hmm. And then thank God for Facebook, mm-hmm. because I would take those pictures and I would post them on Facebook, and then I would write like a meaning. Mm-hmm. And I just kept doing that. And that helped me in the healing process. Writing helped me in the healing process. Talking with my close friend, she had cancer 4 years earlier. So she was a light of hope for me. Mm-hmm. Prayer, meditation, a lot of different types of things helped me get through that period.
Mm-hmm. Sure. What advice would you have for people who feel that they have a calling or a strong personal goal that they want to achieve, but they're just struggling to achieve it?
I think the first step is to figure out what that struggle is. Because, for instance, if it's procrastination, then when I procrastinate, it's because whatever it is just way too big. I don't even know where to start. So, for an example, my pastor asked me to take a look at some volunteer scheduling programs. Mm-hmm. Now, I've never done this before. I had no idea how to start. So then I said, okay, well, why don't we just, talking to myself, just Google it and see what happens. Mm-hmm. So then I Google it and I start getting programs and I start writing them down, and bit by bit, we finally come up with a program. So now I have to test a program. So that was today. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I don't know what to do about testing the program. Okay, well, I need to get people that are going to want to play with me with the testing. So I reached out to a couple of people. I said, that's all you do today is just reach out to the couple of people. And if they come back, then you can do the next step and putting them in the program and start testing. So I think first the step is to figure out what that struggle is. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's that it's really something you don't want to do. Mm-hmm. maybe your work is requiring that you do it. Mm-hmm. So they had to find a way to make it fun and maybe into a game.
Yeah.
Just to shift your brain a little bit from that, really hard procrastination, I'm not doing this kind of thing to, well, maybe there is a possibility if I, let me see if I could get it done in like 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I find that when I start getting into it, it's not as bad as I made it out to be. Mm-hmm. And it moves forward, and then I'm able to get the task done.
Yeah.
And you just chunk it down. If it seems too big, chunk it down. Mm-hmm. And then if that seems too big, chunk that down.
Absolutely. And as you said, sometimes it's really that challenge to just get started. Sometimes that's one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a beautiful day and you'd rather go for a walk or a run, then go for a walk and a run, mm-hmm. and then come back and do it.
Right. Are those the sorts of things that you might coach people on when you were doing your coaching?
Yeah. Yeah. They have a goal and they just don't know how to go about it. I have from Corporate Coach U, they gave a personal foundation program that we could use to start our business. So I've taken that personal foundation program and I've created a coaching program from it. And I've also created a spiritual direction program from it.
Oh.
And the topics are just everyday topics, like having some daily habits or tolerations. What are you tolerating in your life? Mm-hmm. Just various everyday topics. And people are really into that. Relationships. Relationships are mm-hmm. the biggest topic that people want to work on with themselves and with their families, and on the spiritual direction side with God. Mm-hmm. There's a craving for some type of connection with a higher power. And I think the coaching business kind of took off because people were leaving the religious organizations. They saw the hypocrisy and they saw the abuse, and they couldn't put their trust into those organizations. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what the door opened for coaching to come into the industry, mm-hmm. into the market. And that's what a coach does. A coach is listening and helping people in their lives just like a pastor would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how does coaching in a secular format compare to coaching that a spiritual leader or a minister would do?
They're exactly the same. The only difference is one is the spiritual direction. Their goal is to connect on a deeper level with God. Mm-hmm. And the secular is, I think, the same thing. They just don't know it yet. They're looking for a deeper connection. They don't know what it is. Mm. So to approach it in these two different ways, like you said, secular and spiritual, will help the person get to what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. But it's a safer way because maybe they don't believe there's a God. Mm-hmm. I can work with them around that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it comes back down to that. They're searching for that higher power in their life. They want to matter, they want to make a difference, and they want meaning in their life.
Yeah, I think so many of us really want to feel like what we did on this earth made a difference or mattered in some way. Yeah. So I see that. So you've been retired since October, and we're recording this in January. So it's just been about 4 months or so. So what's next for you on your journey from corporate to cleric?
Well, I have this path of ordained ministry, holy orders, which the first step requires going through a discernment period with a group of people. I have 5 people on a discernment team. Oh. And we meet monthly and we discuss like leadership and knowledge of the church, things like that. And initially, where this call come from, how I believe it's the best way for me to serve. So all of these things. Mm-hmm. And what they're doing is they're looking to see and hear the call that I'm explaining to them. I think the gist of it all is to just make sure that this is truly something that I want to invest my time in, because it's not an overnight kind of thing. Right. With school, with going to seminary, it's about 5 years, and it could be more. Mm-hmm. So it's a big commitment, but it's one I'm ready to make, and I'm really willing to make it because I believe that it's what I'm here to do. Mm-hmm. And I'm very interested in doing it and helping people through it. It's going to be great just to see what unfolds. I'm calling it the unfolding of divine destiny. Mm-hmm. And to be in it and see it is really, really great. Right. To see it unfolding and be amongst it and witnessing it as it's unfolding, where in the past it would be upon reflection. So I've lived something, and then upon reflection, I see it. Now I'm living it and I'm seeing it.
That's exciting. So you're really at the start of this journey that you've been thinking about and wanting for such a long time. That's great.
Yes, I never thought that it could happen, and it's happening. It's happening. Mm-hmm. I leave meetings, I'm like, this is really happening. I have to pinch myself.
So how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your journey or the type of work you're doing now, or maybe they're interested in learning about becoming a minister? How would be the best way to get in touch with you?
I think LinkedIn messaging would be the best way to contact me.
Okay, perfect. So I will put a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes of the podcast so that people have it easy to connect with you. Is there anything that our listeners could either help or support you with on your journey?
Hey, they could buy my book.
Yeah, plug your book. Absolutely. How do they buy your book?
You can get my book on Amazon.com. Mm-hmm. Tattitude. Tattitude. It's attitude with a T. Ah. And then they can, put my name in with it, and it'll come up.
Great. Well, Barbara, thank you so much for sharing your story with us on the podcast. It was really great to have you on, and really wish you the best of luck with your journey. It's really exciting that you're finally getting to do this.
Thank you, Carolyn. I'm so glad we reconnected, and I support this work of yours. I think it's really needed. People love story. We learn from story, and this is going to go far. You're going to get a lot of hits. Not me, but, a lot of people that you're going to interview. It's going to be really great. I'm looking forward to listening to them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Beyond 6 Seconds podcast. Please subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player so you won't miss any episodes. You can also find all the show notes and links we discussed in this episode at our website, www.beyond6seconds.com. Until next time.